So, all right, man. So first time doing this on Podbean and Facebook Live, right? So thank you guys for joining in and joining our discussion. Right now, we're talking a little bit about some of the sports issues that are going on currently, right? I feel like there's a lot of crazy stuff that's out there. So, um, Jeremy, what's been intriguing to you about the recent stories in sports that we haven't talked about recently or yet? Oh yeah, you're on mute.
Ah, is that better? Sorry about that. All right.
Yeah.
So, like I said, you didn't hear me, but I said this. We've had a lot of interesting things going on in the sports world, but I think what we've been most interested in recently has been the NBA playoffs, and particularly that play-in tournament. And apparently, nobody who's in the play-in tournament currently who would be in it if the season ended today, right? No one likes it that would be in the tournament. Everybody's trashing it. LeBron said the guy who invented it should be fired because he thinks that he can just get people fired with a word. So we'll see if that guy gets fired or not. We don't know who it is, but just be checking out for random fired NBA employees. It's probably that guy. So, it's interesting because if you're in the number one, number two seed, you're not worried at all, right? You're like, oh, that's a great idea. Give me a couple extra days, not having to do anything. But for whatever reason, the teams like the Mavericks, Trailblazers, they're not too happy about it. So that's kind of an interesting topic. I don't know. What do you think about the NBA playoff tournament and kind of where it stands right now?
um, I don't know. I think that I don't want to say it's pointless, but I think that it did change around the whole league, right? It does change around the whole playoffs completely, right? It changed around the way that they're set up. It changes around who has an advantage or disadvantage, right? It changes around all of that stuff. So that's one of the things to kind of keep in mind with that is that now it used to be like you get into the playoffs, now you have a shot, right? No matter if you're the eighth seed, no matter if you're this, now it's like you get into the playoffs and now you're already tired from extra games. This other team has gotten a rest, and now you're at an even bigger disadvantage, right? That's kind of like the mindset that it is. So I feel like that's kind of different. I don't think I really care for the plan too much. It just seems excess. It seems like doing something just to do something because people are crybabies. You know what I mean? I feel like that might be where
Yeah.
where it really came from.
Well, I think a lot of people have thought that it's, helping to make up for some lost revenue. Anything you can do to get extra games in is a good idea, right? So I feel like that's kind of a part of it. Let's see if we can get some extra games in, get some more television, because this is a big event. They've already said May 18th is when the playoff tournament starts. And it's a
Mhm.
tournament. It's not just a game, it's a tournament, full on tournament. So they're giving it
Yeah,
a
man.
bigger title, giving it a bigger name, making it something that people actually want to watch. So that's kind of where they're going with it. And I can see why they would want to do that to try to drum up interest in it. But I don't think it's just like a crybaby thing. But honestly, I missed half of that audio because for some reason that pod being cut out. But I don't think it's like a crybaby thing. You know what I'm saying? As much as it's probably an opportunity to get some extra games in, seeing as they had to cut the season from 82 to 72 games this year.
Yeah, I think there's two parts, right? I think that the money is one of the aspects of it for sure, right? They're definitely considering the money part, but at the same time, like, was it necessary? Did it need to be something that happened? I'm not sure if it really was. Um, one of the reasons why they initially had it, what I thought was that because of COVID, right, and having some players that might end up being out and may have situations that wouldn't hurt a team long term because now they can still have a chance to get in, even if they're the eighth or ninth or tenth seed, just because they had a couple of COVID issues, right? So I can understand that part about it, right? But at the same time, it doesn't seem like COVID has been as big of an issue with the NBA this season, especially as far as some of the games and how the vibe is with the NBA. I feel like the bigger thing is people are just getting injured, right? Maybe because they haven't had that full type of off season, right? Maybe that would actually be something interesting to look into. was there a higher percentage of injuries on teams that actually played in the bubble compared to those that actually had rest? Right, that would be something to kind of like look and see if that's a correlation from like this year and previous years as well, right? Because that was one of the things that was coming in that we talked about, and a lot of people talked about the Lakers, right, and how the Lakers were gonna be exhausted, right, because they played this whole thing and then they started up, and now we see AD's been injured for a long amount of time, LeBron's being injured for a long amount of time, but what they didn't expect was now they're injured and now they have to play extra games just to get into the playoffs compared to like now they're injured and they get to get a little bit of a break, just knowing that they're in the playoffs, right? So it's hard when you make changes. You don't really know how they're going to affect the future, but now we see how it's affected, and I think people aren't really liking it right now. You know?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that I don't know if there would be a correlation between extra games and injury. And the injuries you just described with the Lakers, Anthony Davis has an injury history. He doesn't have any major injuries, but he every year gets some sort of minor injury. And I feel like this year is just another example of that. For LeBron, it's been kind of a freak injury. You know, that high ankle sprain is not one that happens naturally. He got hit. So those two injuries, I don't think can really be chalked up to having a shorter off season. But we have seen a lot of stars go down with injuries, right? I feel like we've lost a lot of star playing time to injury this year in a way that I haven't really recognized in the past. It seems like in general, the stars play a lot of games, they get a lot of exposure, they accumulate a lot of stats because they're playing all the time. But you know, right, Devin Mitchell's out right now, right? See, you said Devin Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell.
Gotcha.
You got me saying it, man. Donovan Mitchell is out right now, right, with an injury. Didn't we have Beal out? Beal's been in and out of the lineup with injury.
Yeah.
And then of course you do just have the normal old like health and safety protocol stuff, you know. So I feel like a lot of stars, for one reason or another, have been out, and that's kind of been more, I think, impactful than just kind of injuries due to wear and tear because of shorter off season and less recuperation.
Yeah, I wonder what the NBA is planning on doing next year. You know, I feel like that's one of the things that they're trying to get that information about, because I know we're talking about the playoffs and all the stuff, but I think that just that playing game. Do you think that this should be something that goes on into the future? Will there be a need for it in the future? And if there is no specific need for it, do we have it, or is it just a mute point of having extra games to just make money for the owners?
Now you remember last year during the bubble when you were like, I like this, right? We were like, oh, this is cool. They should have this from now on. And I think that's what everybody thought was that one game that would have been a mini series, a best of 3 series, right? If the lower seeded team had won. But because Portland won, it was not even important. You know, just the one game happened and then that was it. But I'm pretty sure everybody saw it as like, wow, that's really cool. We should have that. But now that they have that, everybody, you know, wants to complain about it. I just think that the format is kind of weird. And we've described the format before, but 7, 8, 9, and 10 are all in it. 7 plays 8. The winner of that gets the 7th seed. The loser of that has to play the winner of the 9 and 10 game. And in the 9 and 10 game, the loser is eliminated. So it could be 8 versus 9 for the 8th spot if the 7th seed won and the 9th seed won, basically. Mm-hmm. So after that, you probably would get, if you think, you know, the teams are better, then it should just be the 7th place team and the 8th place team would automatically get in, essentially, because they're just better. But when you lose that first game between 7 and 8, you're going up against a team that just won its game. So there's probably some sort of a mental factor that goes in. A team that just came off of winning a game, that feels energized, that feels positive, versus the team that just lost, that is playing for its playoff life, and it feels like it should have already been in the playoffs under a normal year. So I feel like with the drama that this can create, they're going to have to try it at least one more year. You can't just do it 1 year, right? This is a full-on tournament, and you need 4 or 5 different runs at it to see what type of drama and intrigue it can create. And if it does, they're going to have it every year. They're going to hype it up. They're going to call it its own thing. Like the extra playoff game they had in the NFL this year, they called it the biggest playoff ever or whatever, right? So everything that they introduce, they're going to find a way to give it a new name, to give it a label, to make it interesting as compared to what's there, because otherwise you can't sell it. So yeah, I think it's going to stay around for a few years at the very least, and then maybe if it doesn't work out, they'll get rid of it. But who's to say? I think it stays.
Yeah, see, that's one of the things I'm not sure about, right? Is because I feel like the reason why there was intrigue and it worked last year is because people didn't remember that what they were doing was that they were fixing a situation that came about, right? This whole COVID thing, teams having a chance to make the playoffs, right? We had to make sure that everybody has a shot. And because teams were thrown off, we had to give everybody a fair opportunity. So there was kind of this build up for the bubble, right? It was this build up for this other type of tournament. So the bubble, the play-in games all seemed like a part of the tournament. Now, with how they have it set up, it doesn't seem like a play-in game, right? It doesn't seem like this is part of the whole tournament, the build up for this part. It doesn't have that same type of vibe. And because it doesn't, now it seems like they're just adding something to a situation that didn't need it, right? Last year they were fixing a problem. This year they're just kind of creating one in a sense, because again, there's so many different ways to take it. If you are a team that's been doing really good all season, your star player got hurt, and now you're the 7th seed. You lose your first game. Now you have to play without your star against a team that is like 4 or 5 games below where you are. You know what I mean?
But confident.
They beat you, and now they're into the playoffs. And because your star got hurt for the last final week, now you're out of the, so there's always going to be some type of issue that's associated with it. But we have to figure out how can we still make this relevant, right? Because that's the big point. Is it relevant? Is it helping us get a champion? Is that 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th seed going to win the NBA championship? Probably not. You know what I mean? Like there's a very small chance that's going to happen.
The lowest team that's won has been a 6th seed, right?
Yeah.
I think the Rockets did it in the second year. Was it their second year? Or they're back to back? They were the 6th seed.
Maybe that was what it was.
One of those two teams was a 6th seed that once. I think the 6th seed is the lowest. So in general, if you're a 7th, 8th seed, you're not going to win. It just never happened. So we don't think it's going to happen. But the playoffs already started because tonight, Trailblazers and the Lakers are playing. They are both tied for the 7th seed. The Trailblazers say this is their most important game of the season. This is what that format can create. There's still going to be 5 or 6 games after that. But this is what that format can create. Now, every game, so you don't drop too far down. Who would have thought that the Lakers would be in this position? I put my whole everything, my house, the car, all of it. I bet that they would not be in the play-in tournament, right? I told you that. I was like, I don't even care. And until they hit the 8th seed, I'm not even concerned. Well, they could be 8th seed. They could very well be 8th seed pretty much after this, I think. So yeah, it's intrigue. It's interesting. It makes the games relevant, and it's already started. So hopefully a week from today, we'll get a little bit more clarity on things since, like I said, the tournament starts May 18th. So, was that a Tuesday? Something like that. So that'll be
something like
that'll be interesting. Tuesday. I don't even know what day it is today.
Yeah, I think Saturday's 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th. Yeah. So I think it's a Tuesday. So, but honestly, I just think again, it's crazy because we're talking about this end of the season part like it didn't happen before, right? Like there was always this race to the playoffs that always happened. That was always intriguing. I don't think that this play-in type of thing makes it any more intriguing. I think it's just additional games that are there. So we'll see how it turns out. I feel like once the whole season's over and people start talking about it, we'll get a better idea. Especially once the playoffs starts, right? I think that's your point. If there's an outcome that a lot of people like with this play-in thing, they're going to be like, let's do it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if it just seems like, I'll tell you this, if the Lakers don't make it to the playoffs, people are just going to be hating on this thing. Like it's going to be dismantled. Do you know how many Lakers fans are out there that's just not going to watch? They're just going to dismantle it, right? Like, could you imagine the Lakers not being in the playoffs? Wouldn't that feel weird? Like,
no,
the Lakers missed the playoffs.
That would feel weird. That would be great. That would be great.
I think. Why would it be great? Why you say it's great?
I think it's great because you want to see the most unlikely outcomes, right? We don't want to feel like our sports are scripted or our sports already have a predetermined outcome. And if the number one prohibitive favorite to win the championship doesn't even make the playoffs, that's great. You want to talk about drama? That's great drama. That's something that anybody would love to see. And then you start to figure out who's the next up, who can actually win, right? We already have two unlikely teams at the top of the West. Utah, nobody cares about. Boring team, boring location, apparently. That's what everybody says, right? Phoenix.
Yeah.
Who cares about Phoenix? Who knows what they're doing? Young team, young coach. I mean, they got Chris Paul, the greatest leader in the history of leaders. But here's the one thing: Chris Paul, great leader. You know what? He's up there amongst the ranks of the greatest leaders of Julius Caesar, right? Genghis Khan, right? Mansa Musa, right? Alexander the Great. He's up there because do you know what Julius Caesar never did? Julius Caesar never took a team from 20 wins to 50 wins. Never did it. So there's no way that he's any better of a leader than Chris Paul. Never did it. Think about that. Alexander the Great never did it. Alexander the Great never had a 20 assist game, right? So come on, you tell me who's a better leader, right?
You silly.
Either
man.
way, point being, MVP candidate Chris Paul, number 2 team, Phoenix Suns. They're exciting. They're a part of those teams that can win that nobody even thought about, which is why I think it's great. I love that idea, So,
Man, I think that they still could have a chance to win without the Lakers there. I feel like my issue would be if the Lakers finish the season as a 7 or 8 seed and then they don't make the playoffs, that's where the issue comes in, because now people are going to be like, now you took something that has always been there and you ruined something, kick my Lakers out. They're going to be calling for like the head of the commish, man. Like, this is serious. I don't think you know how Lakers fans take this, man. Like, it is really a weird dynamic, Like, I wouldn't want the Lakers not to make it because they've done all the stuff they've done continuously, and other teams that have did that in the past have made it, right? Especially in a weird, awkward year like this. If they really wanted to get 10 teams in the playoffs, then they should just try to figure out a way to actually have like a 10-team playoff. But again, it seems like it's kind of pointless, right? We said that as far as the champion, there hasn't really been any champions that have been below 6 seed. So now we're trying to bring in some guys that it's just going to be hard for them to win, And what else does it do, right? Now that you start adding more and more games into the playoffs or more teams, well, now you increase the chance and the likelihood that another player could get hurt, right? If star players are having to play additional games to get into the playoffs, well, now what if they get hurt in that play-in game? And now that affects the whole thing, right? So it's like there's just more things than just that basic part, right? There's a lot of other components. And I think that as the season starts to go along and as the playoffs start to go along, we'll get a better feel. But this is a very testy time for the NBA right now, because if they don't get this right, it could look really bad on the league, right? And I don't think that that's what they're really trying to focus on right now. They're trying to build it up. They're trying to have these TV contracts. They're trying to have all of this stuff. So they really need to make sure that they continue this this motion towards success, And I think that this season, especially with having fans back in the stands for a little bit next year, I know that the stadiums are going to be just banging, right? Like they're just going to be packed. So that should definitely be interesting. But again, we'll see how this play-in game goes. We'll see how what turns out, and yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. Can I pivot? Oh, go ahead.
If you make that play-in tournament,
Yeah,
do you consider it having made the playoffs?
No.
Is that a playoff berth?
No.
No,
not me. Like I've dealt with this in baseball for years. Like every time the Pirates made the play-in game, it felt like a big
that fifth seed.
Yeah, it's like it felt like a big. Nah, you didn't make the playoffs. Like, because every year we got beat by the Cubs. It's like, yeah, make a solid team have to play against a team that has a dominant picture, right? Like, it's not fair. It's just it's pointless, right? Like, there's no point for that same type of thing, right? And it kind of adds a little bit more insult.
If you make the first 4, right, in the NCAA tournament, that's the NCAA tournament berth. That saves coaches, jobs for the time being, right?
I mean,
if I'm a coach, I
like I
am
said,
saying I made the play-in tournament. I got it.
I mean, you can
So
say it.
we
You can
fought.
say it,
We
but
had a chance.
hey, you know what? I'll tell you what. Last year, Nate McMillan made it into the playoffs. They got blown out the first round, and he lost his job after signing an
Yeah,
extension.
and you know
Right?
what?
Like,
Nate McMillan wasn't a jerk. Nate McMillan, which is, and he's Nate McMillan. Is Nate McMillan coaching the Hawks right now?
yeah, down in the Hawks, yeah, down
Right.
with the
He
Hawks,
led the Hawks turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think that's a good little segue to talk about your Pacers coaching situation.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I don't know if y'all done heard about the Pacers, but this is kind of wild, right? So um, the Pacers are having a really interesting type of season. They fired Nate McMillan. They did a coaching search for 20 plus candidates. Came down to two guys. They chose one, and they started the season off good. There was a lot of hype around it. There's a lot of talk about this person really being a player's coach. He talked to everybody, engaged with them, asked them these questions, developed a lot of guys. He has a history of developing a lot of the teams. A lot of his teams have become more successful, and he's been in that Nick Nurse lineage of coaches, I guess, in a sense, right? And that's what the Pacers were kind of looking for. Well, this season, Indy's had a lot of issues, the trades, right, and then also the injuries haven't really did as well, and they've played a new style of just basketball for their team. And it's kind of weird because I guess there's been a lot of tension that's been going on between the players and the coaches. And recently, a lot of that stuff has made it into the air. And two of the things that happened, there's an article that came out that was talking about they're not sure about the coach, the fate of the coach for the Pacers after his first year, because of his interaction with Pacers players, with staff, and everything like this. Okay, don't really know what that means. Next week, a few days later, you find a coach and a player getting into an argument mid game and having to be held back by other coaches and players, right? So that was Goga Bidatse, I think it is, and why am I forgetting his name? I just had it there. I'm just gonna call him Christopher now. I don't know why I can't think of his name.
You go back and watch that YouTube video. They said who it was.
Oh no, I can't remember. He used to play
former player
for
though.
Utah.
That coach was
he used to play for
definitely.
Utah as a center. Greg, yeah, Greg Foster.
Greg Foster. Okay.
Yeah. So, anyways, they get into this heated conversation, arguing match on the floor, and it's like, wait, wow, this is really really crazy, right? The owners here just looking at all the stuff happening. Players are pushing back the coach. And then the actual coach, right? This is an assistant coach. The actual coach is kind of like walking around, right? And then on top of that, there came out an article that the Pacers, when they hired this coach, they didn't really look into his interaction with players. They didn't review some of the teams that he's coached with. They just kind of went off of what he was basically saying and what they got sold on. And I thought that is really really wow for a lot of reasons. So first of all, Jeremy, what is your take on the situation with the stuff that you've read, the stuff that you've seen, and the stuff that I've talked to you about on and off of the podcast today?
I just read that one article you sent me, and then I read some just offhand article maybe a week before that, talking about, like you said, the Pacers head coach job security and how he might not have a job after this year. Yeah. And just reading what you sent me last night, I think it's just ridiculous that they didn't know he was kind of a jerk, or they didn't know he wasn't like a leader fit to be a head coach at this point in his career, I guess.
Yeah.
How do you not know that? How is it that your job is to hire coaches and you can't get the one thing right about him being a leader or not? It makes no sense. That's when you're jumping on something you heard. You're jumping on some reputation that probably doesn't exist because you want the name, you want the hire. And the Pacers really did a poor job in the coaching search because, like you said, they were down. They looked at so many people and didn't hire anybody, and people were getting hired other places. So they pretty much did a poor job there anyway. But the guy that they got, they're saying now that, oh, he's not a bad word, but he's just not a good leader or not a good coach or whatever. And that really struck me. Can't you just ask around? Aren't you supposed to have connections? If you're a general manager, you're supposed to know the other general managers. You're supposed to know
Yeah.
the coaches and know the owners. You just got to call somebody, right? Like everything at the upper levels is about relationships. It's about people. You have to have somebody that says, hey, this guy is kind of a jerk. And then you can just leave it alone. And unless he's a proven winner jerk, like maybe Tom Thibodeau or something, or Larry Brown or something, you can't just take a risk on just the guy that just because he was next to a championship coach or Nick Nurse's guy, and Nick Nurse is brilliant, so of course this guy must be brilliant too. It's just a weird thing that a guy 1 year into his tenure would have so much dissension already. So yeah, I think it's kind of a poor job if you don't even know the guy's a jerk, let alone forget his coaching ability. How do you just not know he's a jerk?
Yeah, and it's weird, right? Because like there was a lot of players that were excited to work with him. He has had a success at like different levels, like G League level. He's done really well, but you have to also remember that I guess they thought that he was a people person. I feel like that's the issue with the whole thing. They thought he was a really people person that could kind of control stuff. He was very calm and talking to players and nurturing and helping out, but he was the exact opposite. And the crazy part is that one of the players for the Pacers has already played for this coach before. He's already played for him, and he already had insight. What did the Pacers do? They didn't even listen to him. Like they didn't communicate with him. They didn't ask him about this coach. They just like, oh, he worked with him before. Like, yeah, like this is a perfect fit. And I guess they also said in that same article that that player, as soon as this coach got hired, asked for a trade. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But
who
like,
was that player?
That's T.J. Warren. Right, so
Wow.
yeah, so T.J. Warren, right? So T.J. Warren played with him in the Phoenix Suns, and that's one of the things he talked about working with TJ and stuff like this and everything. But TJ is probably like, I know this guy's style. I know that he's overly aggressive. And it's actually interesting to see because I think when situations aren't working the best, right? When stress comes around, when you're not winning, that's when you really see how a coach interacts with players and how they really go about different things. When he was in Phoenix with the Phoenix Suns, they were just kind of whatever, right? They weren't that good of a team. They were a lot younger, weren't necessarily winning a bunch of stuff. When he ended up going to Toronto, right now they're winning all the time. Right now he's able to build up that recognition. Now he's a good coach with a good pedigree that talks to people, and he should have a shot. But you can't negate all of the different things that have happened previously in his career, because that's the situations that may be similar to your organization, where your organization does not have the same type of success as the Toronto Raptors are having right now. You know, you're going to be dealing with a lot of issues. Like coming in, he had to know you have Victor Oladipo, who has this injury issue. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. He's ball dominant. You have Miles Turner, who they were considering trading. Right, he's a big athletic guy. Blah blah blah. You have all these different weird pieces, so everything's not necessarily going to go smooth. In addition, you're adding into it a new system for a lot of players to play or use to play, and you're trying to plug players in to fit the system, and you're not really making sure that you're using all the players' abilities the right way. And I think that this is where that tension and that turmoil comes in. It's like, hey, you know, we understand that you have a system that you're trying to work to. Let's try to incorporate that and what these players are good at, so that they can get better to that or get better at that, so that when you do get the players that you need, now you can actually build off of what you already started putting in place, right? And I feel like that's the thing, is that right now they're just at a weird place. They were at the 4th seed. I think now they're the 10th seed or 9th or 10th. I think they might be the 10th seed now. Yeah, the 9th or 10th seed. And I think they played Washington tonight. So it'll be interesting with that team, man. Like this is actually pretty crazy that this is happening in the NBA at that level, right? Like they're looking at guys and not really doing the correct background checks. It says a lot about the management, I think, as well. So
yeah, it was not done well. And it's similar to, not similar to, but it makes me think of the Jim Boylan thing in Chicago.
Mhm.
when he was trying to be a tough guy and it just didn't work. And they got rid of him too. So I think it's just a different era. If people don't like you, they're not taking it anymore. The players aren't going to tolerate it, I don't think. And I think management is probably more sensitive to that. But they should have been much better about vetting this guy, figuring out who he was and just having a conversation with the guy that played for him before. And I'm sure, a player is not going to try to ruin a guy's reputation and mess with his money like that. So I'm sure he'd be like, yeah,
Yeah.
he's cool. But if you don't mind trading me, that would be great. Right. So like I feel like if a guy says that, you gotta read between the lines there. Have a little bit of intuition, I guess. But it is what it is, We'll see what happens. I
Yeah.
read that Terry Stotts was also going to be out, barring a playoff miracle, apparently, in
Mhm.
Portland.
Yeah, didn't know that either. But yeah, I think that again, like I said, I feel like there's so many different things right now that are just wild. I think the NBA. I know it's probably hard to be a coach at some points in the NBA, especially with a lot of these players making way more than you, and you having to try to be in control of them, but also building respect and also getting them to buy into your system, and then also making
Yeah.
management happy, and also doing all this stuff, and then making sure that you're involving your assistant coaches the right way, utilizing them, also the development department, scouting. Like there is a lot of stuff that goes about it, and he's actually good at some of that stuff, I guess, because he's supposed to be very meticulous with what he does, but he's also over controlling and meticulous with everybody else as well. And that just doesn't work, man. Like there's too many different personalities. There's too much different things going on in the NBA right now, socially as well as just in general, where it's hard to have that type of mindset and be a successful coach. So that's one thing that they have to consider. I don't know if this coach is going to stay around in the future or not. Hopefully if he does, he gets his chance to like say, hey, that was our first season. Let's smooth this out and let's turn this around, because he does have a lot of ability, but somebody with ability without control, without people backing them up, what are they really? Like you can't go you can't go that far if you don't have the right support team behind you. So
Mhm.
um, hopefully they get a little bit better. But yeah, I think that was one of the things that was actually pretty interesting to me about that one. There was one more thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit outside of that, and that's one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, last year's MVP, Aaron Rodgers. So this whole Rodgers thing, right? Talked a little bit about it before with what might happen, and I said that I don't think personally that he's gonna come back to the Packers, right? And since that time, there's been a lot more developments, right? They had the draft. They actually drafted a lot of guys to potentially help him out and maybe try to entice him to come back. But it doesn't seem like it's working. The more that I hear, or sorry, more and more I start hearing about even old teammates and other people saying that it just doesn't seem right. It doesn't have that feeling that Rodgers is coming back. And this week, Favre spoke out on that as well. So from the time that we talked to now, what is your take on this situation with Rodgers, and do you feel like there is any salvaging that situation now, or do you feel like they should move on? And if they do move on, are they even ready? Like what to anticipate from the Packers next year?
I kind of don't understand why he's upset. I feel like he keeps naming reasons why he's upset.
50
They
dollars
initially
on the
said
head
that
is
when
disrespect.
they drafted the quarterback last year, what people thought was his replacement, he got upset about that. Then apparently they cut some wide receiver that he liked, and he's upset about that. And he's upset with the general manager. I just feel like there's just more stuff that he's upset about. And we're not actually at the core of whatever he wants. And if he just wants to leave and he's making excuses as to why he wants to leave, okay. He apparently said he wants a trade, so whatever. But for all the reasons and everything, I just don't get why he wants to leave necessarily. But if he wants to be somewhere different, if maybe his relationship is now taking priority and he wants to move somewhere, if some other parts of his life are becoming more important, he wants to leave. I get that. And if he doesn't want to live in Wisconsin where it's freezing half the time, I get that too, right? So if it's a non-football reason, I totally get it. But the last 2 years, they've won 13 games. I don't see how football could be a problem there. They win the division easily, and yeah, they've been losing playoff games, but the
Yeah.
fact is they've gotten there. They've had really strong win-loss records. He won an MVP playing in this system. He's not going to win an MVP just because he's a good quarterback. You need team success. You need to play
Mhm.
well within that system. So everything football wise is good for him here. If he's annoyed by the management and everything, and I feel like that's just more of a sign of something else that we don't know about. And if he wants to act on that and leave, fine. But all these other things just feels a little bit superficial, and it feels like it's more of a symptom than a real problem. So if he wants to leave, fine. I think he should and be happy somewhere else, because I just hear that he's kind of been hard to please anyway in the past few years. But why, I don't know. I don't really understand why he's upset.
I'll start out with saying that it all kind of starts with Aaron Rodgers and how he's been. If you think about Aaron Rodgers' his whole career, really, he's been a very competitive person, right? He's always wanted to start. He's always wanted the ball in his hands. He's always wanted to be a leader, and he's shown that, and he's done that. And maybe he's kind of like a leader in the sense, just like that Pacers coach, right, where he's very meticulous and he expects the same thing out of everybody else that's around him, right? He's trying to win a Super Bowl. He's not trying to be good. He's not trying to be 12 and 13 or 12 and 3. He's not trying to do that. What he's trying to do is he's trying to win a Super Bowl. And I feel like the biggest thing for him is that he got shafted. And he really kind of got shafted when he was actually going about trying to win that Super Bowl, right? Because the season before, if you remember, what happened? Well, that season before, he actually they they had a bunch of different issues, right? And line was one of the main issues that they had. The next year they came out in the draft, and instead of like addressing some of these issues, instead of addressing the targets and the health issues with the wide receivers and the issues with the line, they drafted a quarterback, somebody that is a stash away stock type option that they didn't necessarily need for that team to try to win a Super Bowl, right? And this is one of the things is Rodgers like, hey, I tried to be that guy, I tried to be cool. But once we got to that point in the season that was very late, and I wanted, or we're trying to push for a championship, push for a Super Bowl, and we don't because I'm getting hit, wide receivers aren't getting open, because we just don't have the guys. Now it's like, what could have really helped out was that 24th pick of last year, where we took a quarterback that we didn't necessarily need. Instead of investing in the team that's close to the Super Bowl, we just said, all right, we're going to think about our future instead of thinking about our present. And for a franchise quarterback that's been around for so long, to be treated, I guess, in that sense, it's kind of like, well, all right, I want to win a Super Bowl. You guys say you want to. Well, what do? I play my heart out. I still do the same thing. We come close and we don't get it because of certain reasons. All right, now I feel justified in how I felt. And it's not lining up. So now it's time for me to make a change. And I feel like that's where Aaron Rodgers is at. He doesn't feel supported in his goal of trying to win a Super Bowl. He doesn't feel like the team is committed towards that. He feels that they showed that with their actions. And again, I think that's more than enough reason for them to go ahead and try to separate and see what they can do outside of being a pair. I mean, they have a quarterback of the future, so I don't think that they should be that mad. You know what I mean? Like, why would you draft him
The
if you're
future
not
is
ready?
now.
Yeah, yeah. So why would you draft him if you're not ready for him to step in? Because
Yeah.
you also showed the other
Yeah.
quarterback that
I'm
you're
okay
not
with that
ready.
too.
So
I feel
yeah.
like just let him go. If he wants to leave, don't fight too hard. Let him leave. And he wants to go to basically a ready-made contender, which actually is going to disrupt a lot because if he wants to go to San Francisco, they've got to displace somebody. They've got to sit
Mm,
Trey Lance or whatever. Denver, I know we talked about Denver, and your friend said Denver, so that's an option, and that would actually
yeah.
be easy because they just traded for Teddy Bridgewater, but putting Teddy Bridgewater in a backup role to Aaron Rodgers, no one would argue with. So that one would be okay. But I think there's not a whole lot of ready-made championship level teams that don't have the quarterback, that just need the quarterback. So if you could think any, chime in, but I don't think there's that
Baltimore.
many. But that would be interesting to see where he would fit, because it's pretty much I think San Francisco and
Ravens.
Denver are two teams that I heard, and I haven't heard very many others.
Baltimore. Oh, I
Here's a
said
thought though.
Baltimore Ravens.
Oh wow. No, let's not do that. Let's not do that. That's not right. That's not right.
Yo, could you imagine if they did swap quarterbacks, Lamar for Rodgers? Like that would be
Lamar would
real
hate it
interesting.
in Green Bay. He would hate it.
Rodgers hates it in Green Bay.
Yeah. Right, there you
So,
go.
hey,
So
but it's not about them. So
let Love be that guy. What's his name? What's his first name? Is it
Jordan.
Bryce? I don't know the guy's first name right now.
Jordan.
Jordan. Thank you. I don't know why I said Bryce. Let Jordan Love be let him be unhappy then.
Yeah, Bryce Love was the running back out of Stanford. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things, right? Is that
interesting? I was thinking about this the other day. All right, if you're a starting quarterback, under what conditions do you get threatened by another quarterback? And I was thinking in the car, okay, if you draft a quarterback in rounds 1 through 3, maybe 4, that threatens a starting quarterback. That is a threat right there. If you acquire a former starter from another team, that threatens a starting quarterback. But if you draft a quarterback rounds 4 through 7, yeah, it's fine. He's a backup. I'm not worried about it. I'll even mentor him. They'll even claim to be a mentor. They love that stuff, right? Get your mentorship, you get that on, and then you get on another team when you're 40, and you be a backup mentor. So that's setting that play into motion. You're okay with it if he's rounds 4 through 7. You're not threatened. Or if your team signs a perennial backup, right? If Chase McDaniel or something comes to your team, you're like, oh, that's cool. Or Chase Daniel, whatever his name is. If he comes to your team, you're like, oh, that's cool. I'm fine with that. He's not going to start for me, right? But it's interesting what threatens the starting quarterback and what doesn't. Aaron Rodgers would have been fine had they drafted a 5th-round quarterback, or if they had brought in, I don't know, who they had brought in, formerly Christian Ponder or something. You know what I mean? Something like that, right? Like he'd been fine with that.
Yeah, like if they would have say if the Packers last year would have went and got somebody else, and then they would have jumped in front of the Colts and got like Jacob Eason in the 3rd round or something, right? Rodgers probably isn't feeling competition. And I think that to answer that question, it really depends on the quarterback and the system that they play in the recent history, right? Because say, for example, right now in San Francisco, that whole situation, their quarterback just said that he would actually mentor Lance, right? So Garoppolo's basically saying that he'll mentor Lance and that he's happy to have him there. Like he's not happy to have him there. He's not trying to mentor him. He's just saying the right things because he does feel threatened, right? Like that's how you can typically tell when someone feels threatened, if they're saying all the right things because they know that they're on a short leash. And I feel like that's probably a better interpretation and understanding of that type of situation. Does the person feel like they need to say all the right things and do all the right things? Because if I'm like Garoppolo, I'm not mentoring Trey Lance. Like I don't need to. Like I'm not the coach, you know what I mean? In that sense, like he can watch me, he can see what I do, but I'm not gonna just be like, hey, like let's get your game up to starting contention, right? Like that's not what his job is. Garoppolo's job is to lead his team to championships and win. And he doesn't have time in there to specifically mentor. So I'll say this. If you're a quarterback where there's questions about what you're doing and another quarterback's brought in, that's one situation where you kind of like uneasy. The other one is if your team took a quarterback and it wasn't anticipated that was going to happen, that also means that you're probably on a short leash because they considered taking this once in a lifetime opportunity player over other value positions even with you there, right? So it shows where your
Yeah, if they
value is,
reach.
if they reach, right, for something, right? So I feel
Yeah.
like those types of situations are probably like the biggest ones, right? Even if it's a starting quarterback from another team, I don't feel like that's as big of an issue. You typically don't see too much of those quarterbacks just jumping over the starting quarterback. It just doesn't happen as often. Um, but yeah, if you're a quarterback and your team trades draft picks for another quarterback, that's another one of those signs. So I would say that
Yeah.
those are the three main signs as far as a quarterback. Because Rodgers, I don't even think that he felt threatened. I don't think that it was the threatened part. It was just like, why are you wasting my time? Like my time is valuable. Why are you wasting it? You're wasting a whole year. Like I don't know, like
Yeah.
how
You know,
motivated
I
is
don't,
it?
I understand, but I feel like that whole thing is really media driven because the team does what it thinks is best. And if Rodgers was all on board, he'd be like, all right, that's fine. We'll see what happens. Because it's not like the Packers don't have a good offense, regardless, right? The whole thing about them not drafting a wide receiver in the first round, whatever, they still get good wide receivers. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter what round they
Kind
get
of.
in. For some reason, Rodgers seems to have good wide receivers.
He doesn't
And
have good
whatever
wide
you say,
receivers.
he's still throwing a lot of touchdowns. Even if he doesn't, yeah, if he doesn't have great wide receivers, but he makes them great, it doesn't make a difference, does it? He's still able to win games. They're still winning a lot of games, you know? So
Yeah, but
I
there's a
understand
difference
why
though.
he would be like, oh, they didn't care about me and they drafted him, whatever he's annoyed by. I get it, but at the same time, it hasn't hampered them before. So why is he upset? And you
I
got
think it
the
has hampered
Packers seem
him
to have
though.
a lot of injured guys every year. They seem to do okay
Yeah.
with being able to find guys. They find some depth in their lineup. So I think they're fine. It seems like it anyway in terms of stockpiling enough talent to get through a season.
See, I'll say two things. I'll say, and I'm gonna make a transition in a second, but I'll say two things. Right? Is that when you think about that, it's kind of like, hey, because you can do this, we're not going to help out that thing. We're going to think about something else, right? But it's not just because he can do that. Like, just because he can do it doesn't mean that it's the easiest thing. Just because he can do it doesn't mean that it's optimal. Just because he can do it doesn't mean that they can win a championship. And that's the issue, is that just because they can isn't the best opportunity. Just because Andrew Luck could throw passes and hit a lot of guys accurately and can move didn't mean that he needed to be passing on the run every single down, right? Like that's one of the things, is that you have to make sure that you develop these guys, because when you have a top quarterback and you're not using up all their ability, because they have to think about, is there pressure coming, right? They have to think about, how do I have to get this guy open? Well, I have to go from this progression to that progression to this progression. Wouldn't it be nice just to go to your first progression more times than not and be like, that's the guy. I can take advantage of this matchup, right? Because that makes it easier for a quarterback. If you think about some of the guys that he's had, right? He's had a lot of wide receivers that he could just go to, right? Like these guys could make the catches, right? Um, Even when he had Jimmy Graham, right? Like similar type of thing. It wasn't that long, but it kind of worked a little bit, right? But if you think about all these other wide receivers that he's had that were really top guys, he had somebody to go to. He doesn't really have that same type of go-to guy consistently in and out. So I think that that's one of the things. It's all about your team, what they have, and how you can utilize it, because you have to put them in a situation where they can succeed. And the reason why I want to transition from that point, or where I want to go from that point, is talking about one of the top two point guards of all time, right? So Russell Westbrook, one of the top 2 point guards of all time. What is your take, Jeremy? What is your spontaneous reaction?
That I disagree with that take that he's one
Come
of the top
on,
two point
man.
guards
Nah,
of
I
all
was playing.
time. I disagree that he's a point guard, but based off of position he is, I know that you really like Russell Westbrook, and I'm gonna need you to explain why after I'm done, I guess. But what about him? He's okay. I mean, he's okay as a point guard. He's a really good high energy player. He's one of the most athletic people to play that position. He's got one of the highest motors to play that position. And if you are a fan of people just being able to play all day long, he's a lot of fun to watch. I think he's less fun to watch if you're on his team because you're probably going to be watching him a lot until he decides to pass you the ball after he's penetrated, or when he's trying to get his 20 assists, how he does his thing. It's really kind of all over the place. But that's kind of what makes him who he is high energy, high motor, frantic type play. So I think that he's an interesting player to watch. Yes. Top two all time, I don't know. I mean, second behind Chris Paul, sure, but top two all time, I don't know. Yeah, no, he's not second behind Chris Paul. No. So anyway, I think that he's a good player. He puts up crazy numbers that when he's done will not be duplicated. But I don't think anyone will want to duplicate them because at the end of the day, if you're not winning at a high level, it kind of doesn't matter how gaudy your numbers are. And he's figured out how to put up gaudy numbers, but he hasn't figured out how to get his team in the top 2-3 seeds and get his team deep into the playoffs as the primary ball handler and as the leader of the team. So that's my take on him. I think he's a really good player, but yeah, I mean, he's not my top 2-point guard. I'll say that.
Okay, so I'll say, actually, I'll ask you one question before I jump in on that one, right? So my one question to you is, what if? Because what if is a very interesting question in basketball, I think, because with basketball, like a few points could be a whole championship, right? So what if OKC, when he was there with Kevin Durant, what if they would have won the championship, right? What if that could have happened, right? So first of all, that's one question, right? What if they would have won the championship? Would he been viewed different at 20, what was he, 25, 23, 25, maybe 23 or something
No,
like that?
he was way younger than that, dude. Had to be 23, 24 maybe. Not
Yeah,
way younger than
23.
25, but younger.
Yeah. So 23, 24, right? So this dude is like 23, 24, the point guard of a championship winning team. Like, do you know how like different that would have made his career, right? Say, in addition, Kevin Durant wouldn't have left. Say if Kevin Durant would have came back and they would have went on a run of 2, maybe 3 championships. Probably not, right? But say if they did, say if because they are there, now they have other free agents that want to come for cheap prices to OKC, right? Veterans that could have came, and now they're winning more. This changes around the whole view on Russell Westbrook. And now people might say, he's the best point guard of all time. He's won these 3 different championships. He's averaged a triple double for this many years of his career, something that's never been done. Like, I think the whole story changes depending on certain things. And that's one of the things to kind of keep in mind with basketball. So I think that perspective is one of those things that we can't get away from, because then it starts to limit us really acknowledging what a person has done or where their level is.
Yeah, but the problem being that what ifs aren't real. And if we're not living in reality, then we're not actually addressing the actual question.
But that is reality.
What if Russell Westbrook won 5 championships? Okay. What if Chris Paul won 5 championships? What if, I don't know, Charles Barkley?
Well, no, it's a huge what if though. It's a huge what if, because if you think about what happened, Russell Westbrook was with OKC. He had one of the best players in the world with him. Well, if that player would have stayed, maybe they would have won a championship. But that player left, and the team that he went to, that team won a championship. And the point guard for that team is known as one of the best of all time, partially because of that championship that he was given. Maybe that Russell Westbrook could have said, yo, like, if Kevin Durant would have played that same way, if he would have came here and came back, this would have been that same type of situation. So when you're giving so much credit to Steph because of the addition of this in the championships, like, don't put Russ down because somebody else made a different move. Like, I think that you have to consider that part.
What I think happening is, as you described the difference between Russell Westbrook and Steph Curry, I think the difference is the playing style. I think the reason
It is
why
a lot.
Kevin Durant left was because of the playing style. So in 2011, they made the finals, right? Or 2012? 2012.
12.
And then Kevin Durant went to Golden State in 2016, was it? So he stayed there 4 more years, and they made at least one more conference finals, if not two. I can't remember, but they had playoff success. But the way that they played with that team, with Russell Westbrook being the point guard, was not the same style that could generate wide open looks. Because Russell Westbrook, of course, is not a great 3-point shooter. The whole crux of the Golden State offense was the floor spacing created by their terrific 3-point shooters. And when they didn't have a great one, they could find someone that could fill the job and be good enough of a 3-point shooter to space the floor, up the tempo, and take efficient shots. And Russell Westbrook is not an efficient shooter. He puts up great stats. He's not a great 3-point shooter. He has this mid-range bank shot that sometimes looks like he shouldn't be banking from so far. He's not Tim Duncan, right? He has a lot of different parts of his game that aren't efficient, but because he is so energetic, he's at a lot of possessions at a okay efficiency equals a lot of good stats, but he's not as efficient, I think. And so I don't know if people are calling Steph a better point guard overall, but they're definitely saying he's a better shooter, he's a better scorer, he's a better leader. And I don't think Russell Westbrook gets credit for being a leader because of the teams he's on. First of all, his teammates, I don't think ever say, "Oh, this guy's a great leader. He's the heart of our team." And secondly, they don't win the number of games that Steph Curry's teams were winning. Steph Curry led his team to a championship as the best player on the team before Kevin Durant even got there. So that's another feather in Steph's cap as compared. And I just think it's a playing style thing. I think it's, can you draw the attention away to get the open looks for your other team? In a way, Steph was making teammates better without having to pass the ball. Whereas Russell Westbrook needs the ball in his hands, needs to pass the ball, and those two are just different players. And I think that is kind of a huge difference. The efficiency and the ease with which he can win games and make players better. He has to do it with brute force. He has to put up a triple double for his team to win. He's got to just keep running at you and going at you. And it works sometimes, but it's not the easiest way to do it for especially an 82 game season.
Yeah, so I think I do think that's a good point as far as like the two differences in the two teams and what they offer, right? It is totally different styles, and that's the thing is, it is Kevin Durant's ability to go and do whatever he wants to. I guess my biggest point was just saying that if he had that additional supporting cast in another year of growth, what could have happened, and not necessarily what could have happened, but what if they would have won, how would that have changed his legacy and how people look at him? Because I think that Russ definitely made a good point. He was like, people talk about triple doubles like they're not that, but he's like, but until I started getting them all the time, right? People weren't talking about it like that. They were like, wow. I remember when Lance Stevenson got like 5 triple doubles. It's like, oh yeah, he leads the NBA in triple doubles. And people were just like, yeah, people were just like, dang, like Lance is balling. He's leading the league in triple doubles. LeBron, he's like, yeah, LeBron, another triple double. Go Bron. Go Bron got another triple double. See that? Like everybody talks about it when it's somebody other than Russell Westbrook, just because they're so used to him getting it. And it's just kind of like, because he's not loud, because he's not that person that's demanding stuff, because he doesn't have this championship. I think even more is just because he's not that loud, social type of person. People just don't really think about it. They're just like, oh yeah, Russ is just doing that. But who else dunked today? What's Zion up to? What do LeBron do? Right? Because it's a better storyline. Mm-hmm. Like the storyline of Russ getting a triple double, in a sense, is kind of boring, right? And it's wild to say it, but it's kind of boring because it's expected, and that's sad. And that's sad, right? Because if there's a player that doesn't do it and they get triple doubles, then it's like, wow, they're doing something. But I feel like Russell Westbrook shouldn't be.
But I think
down because he does this often.
Right, but I think if we're defining his career as triple doubles, you have to ask yourself, what is the importance of a triple double? It is arbitrary. The number 10 is great, but it's arbitrary. It doesn't have any more winning significance than other numbers. Draymond Green, he could have a mediocre night, 5 points, 15 assists, and 12 rebounds. No one would ever say that that's a great game per se. But the way he influences the game is so great without having to score. And then sometimes he'll get 10 points and actually get a triple double because he usually will get the assist and the rebounds to match up with that. But is a triple double a stat or is it an accumulation of stats? Is it a description of something? Is it really important? If I average 9 assists a game versus the person averaging 10 assists a game, does that make a difference? Or is one of my teammates going to give the other assist up and we're going to still be tied or win the game? I just think that I think the numbers don't tell the full story, you know? And I was looking at one of the videos that the NBA storyteller did on YouTube. It was a pretty good video because he was talking about teams with people who had their assists that were just one person got most of the assists. Some critical threshold of like, if 60% of your assists come from one person, then that person can be shut down and your team will lose. The Utah Jazz had John Stockton, who was the majority assist percentage guy, right? He was the guy who was responsible for most of their assists. Well, if you figured out how to play him, then maybe you could win that series. Whereas the Bulls, of course, they didn't have one guy getting assists, and maybe they didn't have that many assists overall because they were kind of an isolation team. But they spread the ball around. They had different people who could handle the ball, and if you do that, it's better. James Harden in the playoffs, he's the usage rate is high, the assist percentage is high. You can shut them down. And Russell Westbrook is a high usage, high assist percentage guy. Needs the ball.
But they can't shut him down.
If he has a bad game, if things aren't going right with him, then maybe your team doesn't do well. So my question is like the triple double thing. That's great, but is it actually important? I don't think it's actually as important as people are putting the emphasis on it, because there's a reason why only 5 assists were the league. People weren't gunning for triple doubles, and I'm sure people were doing just fine without it. I can almost guarantee you that people won championships those same years when people only had 5 triple doubles. Don't quote me on it, but I can almost guarantee you that championships were won those same years.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that was a good point, right? And what I'll say is that it's not about that he does it, but he can do it consistently, right? Like they can't stop him. They can't shut Russell Westbrook down from doing certain types of things because he averages this over a complete year, right? What you are saying though is that with Russell Westbrook, if you can make him having the ball in his hands less efficient, then that really causes an issue with the team, right? Which is true. And I think that why you have to look at why he's inefficient. If you want to be a successful team, then you have to say, Russell Westbrook isn't efficient because of X, Y, and Z, right? It's not because he just is a bad player. It's just because he hasn't had that team to help him in the ways that he needs, right? Like he doesn't need isolation guys to just hold the ball, to dribble forever, to find their shots, right? It doesn't necessarily work as well with his style. Can he win with that guy? Yeah, he can, but it's not the one that works with his style. What is his style? Quick, fast-paced, energy, transition, young, athletic guys. And I feel like you're seeing that happen right now with Washington. And I feel like, honestly, Westbrook is having a lot of fun out there. Like he's having a lot of fun with a lot of these young guys. I saw when they played the Pacers, they're just transition, just running. Like the passes that he's putting are on point. And I feel like now they have a situation where he is a little bit more that top guy where they can just be like, all right, as soon as I get a rebound, start running, right? Start running, find your transition. I'm going to get y'all easy shots. And then what he needs to do is say, I'm going to get y'all paid. All right, just run. I'm going to get y'all paid. And if he does that, then you can see he becomes a lot more efficient. I know his assist turnover ratio is still like 2-to-1, right? Like for every 2 assists, 1 turnover, which is still something that he needs to work on, right? If he could get that to like 2.5, 3 or so, 4, that would be amazing, right? Because now we're talking about, all right, this guy is really holding the ball really well. And that means that if this guy is getting 20, 25 assists, right, then that means that he's also having, what was that? That's also means that he's having 10 turnovers. You know what I mean? 10, 12 turnovers a game. Like that's probably the part that needs to be addressed. And like I said, I wish that he just had a better 3-point shot. I wish that he had a little bit more range. I told Jeremy, I think that he just needs to scoot back a little bit further because he has that jump shot, that high bounce. So he just needs to scoot back a little bit further.
Bank it from 3?
Yeah, just get that side bank from 3 and he's good. So
yeah.
But yeah, man, I thought that was pretty good.
That you said something that I think was really important. You said you were talking about Russell Westbrook's growth earlier,
Mhm.
And I think that's just kind of one of the things that I think has kind of eluded him, and that is his growth. And I think he has grown from a person who was able to do a lot of things at a high level to a person who can
Mhm.
do those things even faster than he used to do. Excuse me. So
Yeah.
like I think that when he decided he was going to try to put up a triple double, he intensified his numbers he was always getting already. But I don't think, like you said, he made himself more efficient. The 3-point shot hasn't gotten better. The control hasn't gotten better. You know what I mean? Like growing up in the 90s watching basketball, there was always that point guard who backed the guy down. Sam Cassell, right? He would back a guy down. Mark Jackson, back a guy down from the half court line. Like these guys, you're like, they're not that skilled, are they? But they were, but they just had a certain style and a certain pace that they had to the game that they were in control of the game, even if they weren't running up and down the court 100 miles an hour. And there's
See,
an
so
element of like
yeah,
being in control of the game, slowing it down, changing tempos, and maybe he just didn't develop because he
he
chose to
he
focus
did.
on doing it 100 times faster than he had before and more intensely than he had before. But maybe like we're saying, not efficiently. Maybe that he just
Hmm.
never decided to change his game to be that more controlled game. He just decided, this is who I am. I'm gonna lean into that instead of trying to change. And instead of being that
Yeah.
more traditional point guard, just be the version that he was, who is a person who's really out of position. He's just short, so he has to be a point guard, or he doesn't shoot as well, so he has to be a point guard.
I I think that it's a little bit more, again, like when we have these conversations, you kind of make me think about things. Like I think the problem is that with him, he actually just tried to develop himself to be the best that he could be. He wanted to give his all on every single possession, whether it was offense, whether it was defense, whether it was transition, whether he can handle the ball as good as he should be able to, whatever, right? But him getting rebounds means that the ball is going to be in his hands to start out with transition, right? And that means that he can determine the flow of the team. The problem is when you have this guy that has the ball in his hands that wants to determine that can determine the flow of the team, and he's going far ahead or wants to push it, and everybody's going slower. Now you take a transition point guard or transition fast-paced point guard into this half-pace offense type of thing, and now you're saying, "Hey, run this, do something different than what you're really good at," and now you're taking away from his strength. So what you really want to do is you want to have him do what he does. He's going to get rebounds. Well, again, this means that you have to have a team that doesn't necessarily have to focus on rebounds. You don't need a big guy that's going to be up there competing for the rebounds. You need big guys that are going to be able to run, right? As soon as they see him there and know he has the rebounds, well, now you have these 6'10", 6'11", 7-foot guys that are agile going down the court, and now they have mismatches, right? And that's why they've been efficient recently. So again, if you can put him in the right situation where it doesn't stagnate what he's doing, then I feel like he could lead a team to a championship. But you can't stagnate who he is. You have to appreciate what he does, understand that that's just how he's going to be, and understand you have to have a team that likes to run. Get you some power forwards that think that they're wings. You know what I mean? Like get some centers that think that they're like shooting guards. Like get those type of players, put them around him, and see what happens. You know what I mean? So I think that that's my big take with Westbrook. And shout out to him for doing what he's done with a lot of I'd say a decent amount of composure, and a decent amount of like respect with a lot of the different things. And now he's in
And
Washington, and
that's
like I
not
said, it
bad
feels
being
like
the
he's
number two point guard
having a
of all
fun
time.
time. Hey, like that he has to take it. Even if he's considered top 5 by a lot of people, like that's probably good. I was like, I don't think that he really cares. I think that he just cares about like doing the best that he can. Like people are gonna judge him. Like he's always been like they're gonna judge me from the clothes he wears to the way he plays, like from his like mentality or attitude. He's just Russ, So shout out to him. I think he's one of the best point guards of what he actually does and what he offers. It's just a different class of point guards. Maybe that'll be the next type of point guard, one that's like him, but is actually better with the ball and more efficient. That would be dangerous.
Yeah, he's definitely an original. He's one of one, as they say, right? So
Yeah,
that's
definitely. So
that's something to be proud of.
Cool, man. Well, any other little last minute things you want to talk about with the spontaneous reaction before we close out the show?
I was working on a non-sportsy thing. I woke up this morning and I kind of had a craving for some frosted mini wheats. So I went out and I got those and it hit the spot. It made me happy. Do you have a favorite cereal that like you just your go-to cereal sometimes when you need a just like a
It's weird,
cereal? Is there a
honestly.
go-to?
I don't even eat cereal anymore. I used to, and then I just kind of like stopped. But I used to eat all kind of cereal. It used to be my thing. Um, I used to love Rice Krispie treats, corn flakes, those little like honey oat things. I don't have cereal right now, but I do acknowledge these Trader Joe gluten-free
Granola?
granola loaded fruit and nuts. They're still not even that healthy for you.
Is that
They're all
trail
right.
mix kind of thing?
Yeah, something like that. 9 grams of added sugar. But all right, it's not
Granola
bad
is
for a
cereal,
little
man.
small snack. I know that's what I'm saying. Like that's why it's kind of like it's cereal without the milk. But I don't really eat these that often. I just got them because
Man,
I
you
was
know what?
feeling fat.
I love when I ask you these type of questions because they always turn into advertisements, and we need to go ahead and get that money. You just did an
Yeah.
ad. That's gonna be on YouTube. That's
Hashtag
gonna be
Trader
on on
Joe.
the on the internet, man.
Well, I
There
did
you
say
go.
I don't know if they're that healthy and they have 9 grams of added sugar, but the flavor and the consistency for a small snack is good. So Trader Joe's
Yeah,
granola.
I would say granola is probably not healthy in general, but it's probably better than some things you could eat.
Yeah, like Cali cream ice cream. I made some ice cream sandwiches out
Yeah,
of that yesterday. So good.
yeah. There
With
you go. You
little
heard it.
small
Cali
little
cream
ginger
ice
snack.
cream.
Oh
Y'all
my
heard what it
gosh.
is.
Cali cream.
Go
I'll
get
be
it.
there later. So all right, man. Well, outside of that, I thought this was a really cool show. I'm glad that we got to talk about some of those topics. Oh, last thing I wanted to talk about real quick. DK Metcalf is running the 100-meter dash, trying to qualify for the USA Olympics, right? Or qualifying meet, right? What do you think about
Oh
these
yeah,
athletes trying to switch sports and do that? Like it is hard to be a track runner or athlete and try to get those times. You know what I mean? Like just taking a half a
yeah.
second off of your time or like a point one off of your time. That's a lot, man. Like that when you're going that fast. So I think that's going to be interesting. What are your thoughts? Have you heard much about that?
I heard about it, and I would just say this: football players are really fast, but sprinters are a different level of fast. They have to be, right? This is a pyramid, and at the top, there's not very many people that are at the top, especially if you're talking about making the Olympic team. I think he could be fast, but I'd like to see that because I don't think he could qualify for people who just do that thing, right? He has to do other things. He has to learn how to be a wide receiver. He's got to memorize a playbook. He's got to worry about downfield blocking and all that stuff. He's not just running, just sprinting. And I think that those guys that are sprinting have the dedicated workouts, exercises, and they've been doing it for years. I mean, if it's the Olympics, they've been training since the last Olympics. So
Yeah.
I think it would be good to see. I hope he does well, but I don't see him winning. I mean, who's the last guy who's like a fast guy trying to qualify for the Olympics? I mean, did Tyreek Hill try that at all? Because
I
I don't
know.
think that he even
No,
qualified,
I
and
don't think.
he's got
I
so
think
much acceleration.
Goodwin did from Texas, but he was track too. Like he was the same type of thing. He ran track for Texas, and then yeah, I think did he qualify for the 4x4 team for the Olympics, something like that, maybe. Yeah, yeah. I think he might have. That might have been the last guy that I can remember
What's his
that
name?
really tried to do it. Goodwin, was it Marquise Goodwin from
Who was it? Oh,
Goodwin?
Goodwin.
Mark,
Okay, okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I just couldn't hear you. I feel like
yeah.
who is it? Jeff Demps from Florida. He
Oh,
was
he's fast too.
from
Yeah,
one of
he's
the
track guys.
sprint
Yeah,
teams.
yeah. So there's definitely a lot of those guys that are out there. What I will say though is, for DK Metcalf, like we don't understand the times the same way that we think we do a lot of times. Like whether wins or loses, he still wins, right? And I feel like that's the biggest thing is because right now it's kind of weird. Like athletes are like, yeah, we want to do track, right? The track people are like Lolo Jones is like, he ain't winning. He ain't winning if he does anything. Like my people don't stand up. Michael Johnson was like, yeah, like these football players, like they're fast, but they ain't fast. Like they don't know fast, so they get on that track. You know what I mean? And
Yeah. Well,
hey,
I
like
mean, I
it.
don't know.
Well, I was gonna say it could be true, but the reason why he's gonna win is because like this could all turn into a whole marketing thing, right? Like maybe he
Yeah.
doesn't win this race, but he shows that he's doing good. Well, what else? Now he's gonna get some type of sponsorship, right? Competing with these different races. Now he's probably gonna try to like race individual people one on one, and then he's gonna make a whole event about it. People are gonna tune in.
Yeah.
They're gonna make $2-3 million just from a race per.
Yeah.
You know, like they're changing around the sport, and that's what's going on in the world of sports. It doesn't necessarily matter if you're the best. It just matters that you are an interesting storyline that can compete, right?
Yeah.
Jake Paul, Mayweather, like this fight, like if Mayweather loses, that would just be the most disappointing day in
Hmm.
boxing history. Like literally, like it would be the most disappointing day in boxing history. Like more disappointing than Tyson like biting the ear off. More disappointing than Tyson knocking somebody out in the first seconds. Right? Like it'd be the most disappointing thing. And I like what Mayweather said. I'll knock out you and your brother in the same day, right after each other. Like I would pay to see that more than just them two fighting because like again, it's that difference in competition, but it doesn't matter. That fight's gonna pull in millions. You know, like Jake Paul is probably gonna make 16, 18 million just from that fight alone. You know,
Yeah.
that's a huge payday.
This is
So
crazy. This is almost like those crazy stunts where people would fight horses and stuff now. Like they're just doing sideshows now. Like, hey, look at this guy who can actually box versus this guy who is kind of a pretend boxer. But to go back to DK Metcalf, I think that's a great point that you made about that and the exposure that he gets. And we always talk about the football players with the helmets on. Nobody knows who they are. Now
uh
people are going to know who DK
mm-hmm.
Metcalf is. So it doesn't matter if he does other things off the field. On the field, he's going to have a much bigger following anyway. So
Yeah,
it can only help, like you said. Really good point about DK Metcalf.
yeah, for sure. Cool, man. Well, I think that was a good conversation. Um, outside of that, this is Beyond Sports with Paul and Jeremy. I'm Paul.
Jeremy.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you check us out on Podbean. If you're on Podbean, make sure that you add us on Facebook. Come and actually check out some of the live shows. You can see some of these crazy outfits that Jeremy is wearing. They're just
It's
unbelievable.
going to be the
So
same. It's going to be the same every time.
don't believe him. It's gonna be crazy outfits
I only
every
wear the
single
V-necks.
time. So
I'm like an old
only
guy.
wears the V necks.
I feel like my
Outside
granddaddy.
of I feel like you look like your granddaddy. Look like your granddaddy. You got your hair all knotted up. Look like your granddaddy. Beard, you ain't shaved.
Yeah, I'm about to
Granddaddy
cut this
probably
off
like, why
though.
you ain't shaved? What? You said,
I'm
why
about
you
to
got
cut
to cut
this
it
off
off?
tomorrow. It's gone. I
Why
was
you
gonna do
cutting it
it
off,
today,
man?
but I got sidetracked. But it's gone.
Man, you can't cut that off. That's the image now. You
Now I'm
gotta
tired of it. It ain't
keep
doing
going with it.
nothing. It ain't twisting. No better. No locking. No nothing. Whatever. I'm done with it. So.
Oh well, man. Well, if you guys didn't get to see this show, go to the Facebook page. It's should be downloaded on there. You can see Jeremy's haircut before he actually cuts it off, because this is going to be one of the memorable things for the end of the first year of Beyond Sports with Paul and
Oh
Jeremy.
yeah,
So
because in our second year, I will have a different haircut. Uh, Anybody listening out there, our episode on May 16th, I believe it is. I've scheduled it. Will be a crossover between my movie podcast and this. We'll talk about a movie that we both like, a sports movie. Well, it'll be a movie that Paul likes a lot. It's a really good, deep, interesting conversation with some fun considering the topic. But check that out too, because it's our 1 year anniversary, May 15th, is it? I think.
yeah, yeah.
So about a week from now. So hey, 1 year down, many more to go, hopefully. And we'll just see what happens in the future. But we've had fun so far, and hopefully you guys check out that 1 year anniversary.
Hey, sounds good. Signing off from Paul and Jeremy. Thank you guys for joining us. And until next time, check out the 1 year anniversary and have a good weekend.
All right, see you guys. Thanks a lot.
Peace.